Hi everyone, my name is Tanya and welcome back to my channel about fiber arts. In this video I'm going to show how I make step by step this Pinterest inspired vintage skirt with a pointed yoke. You don't need any pattern for this project. I'm going to show you how I draft a pattern directly on the fabric. You will not need a serger. I'm going to show how to finish it neatly without it, using French seams with side pockets, bias strips to finish hem and inner yoke, and for the back of the skirt I'm going to show you how to make continuous placket instead of inserting a zipper. I've made my skirt out of framey fabric. I've used about 2 meters of it. It's a medium weight fabric, so somewhere between 2 to 2.5 yards of medium weight linen or linen blend would be perfect for such a project. You don't need to make an embroidery, but if you want to make one, I would suggest to go to Pinterest to get some inspiration. I've taken several pictures from Pinterest and combined them into one design and traced it onto my fabric. I hope you will enjoy this video, and let's get started. If you're ready in embroidery, start by cutting a piece large enough to cover your entire front yoke, including the folded top edge. Then trace your design onto the fabric. I just held mine up against the computer screen. Not the best way, but perfectly fine when you don't have a light box. Complete the embroidery before cutting the actual yoke. To draft the yoke pattern, I cut 2 rectangles folded at the top edge out of scrap fabric and pinned them onto my dress form in the shape of the future yoke. Then I simply sketched the lines of the pointed front and the straight line for the back, choosing the exact width I wanted. For the A-line skirt, I cut 2 identical panels. The top edge of each panel needs to be about 1.5 times wider than the lower edge of the yoke. The width of the lower edge is completely up to you. I simply used as much width as my fabric allowed. Then on the front panel I drew a straight line from the sides towards the center, creating a shallow white triangle that matches the shape of the pointed yoke. For the pockets I first drew a straight line along the grain. Then I placed my hand over the fabric and sketched a shape that would feel comfortable to use. I cut out 4 identical pieces. Now onto assembly. First I place a pocket onto the front skirt right sides together. I stitch along the line starting from the raw edge, going about ½ an inch in, and then finishing back at the raw edge, forming a sort of rectangle. I cut close to the stitches, trimming away the excess, and gently clip into the corners, being careful not to cut through the seam. Next I flip the pocket to the wrong side. I press the seam neatly, making sure it's always pointing toward the wrong side for a clean finish. And top stitch about 1 millimeter from the edge to finish the pocket opening. Then I place the other half of the pocket underneath the stitched piece, wrong sides together, aligning the edges carefully. I pin the 2 pieces together and stitch close to the edge using a tiny zigzag. Then I trim the extra seam allowance and flip the pocket right side out. I press the seam and make another stitch about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Finally, I give the finished pocket a good press. I cut about 4 inches at the center of the back skirt to create the placket. Then I stitch a strip of fabric 2 inches wide and twice as long as the placket to the placket opening, positioning the strip underneath as I saw. I open the placket almost flat, creating a straight line so I can work neatly on the corner. I press the seam allowances toward the placket and trim the excess width from the placket, leaving about 1 inch. Then I fold the placket once toward the raw edges. Then I fold the placket a second time so that the folded edge just overlaps the seam by about 1 millimeter. I baste it in place, then top stitch from the right side about 1 millimeter from the original seam. Then I press both sides of the placket together and stitch carefully along the straight line at the corner. Finally, I give the placket a good press, shaping it into its final form. I join the front and back skirts using French seams. First, I stitch them wrong sides together with a tiny zigzag, trim the extra seam allowance, then flip the pieces right sides together and make another stitch about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. I cut the back yoke pattern into 2 halves, creating a center opening for the back of the skirt. Then I cut the 2 pieces, adding about 3/4 of an inch at the center for the button placket. I reinforced half of each yoke with fusible interfacing. Then I sew the side seams of the yoke, trim the seam allowances, and press the seams open. I fold the back yoke right sides together at the center back and stitch. Then I flip the piece right side out and press the center button placket. I make 2 parallel gathering stitches along the top edge of the skirt. I divide the skirt into 4 segments, from the center back to the side seam and from the side seam to the pointed center of the yoke on each side. Then I pin the yoke to the skirt right sides together, aligning the center and side seams. I gather the skirt evenly to match the width of the yoke. I attach the skirt to the yoke using 2 parallel stitches, about 1/8 of an inch apart. Then I top stitch with a zigzag for a clean finish. If I had a serger, I would have used it for this step. Finally, I trim the extra seam allowances. I decided to finish the raw edge of the inside yoke with a bias strip. To do this, I first carefully undo a small section of the seam at the center back. Then I pin the bias strip to the raw edge, right sides together, and stitch all the way around the yoke. I press the bias strip away from the yoke, then fold it over the raw edge and press again. Then I top stitch the bias strip about 1 mm away from the original seam. I press the seam that joins the yoke to the skirt towards the yoke. Then I cover the seam with the inside yoke and baste it in place. Finally, I secure the inside yoke with hand stitches, catching about 1/8 of an inch from both the yoke and the skirt, inserting the needle right next to the original seam for an invisible, clean finish. Similarly, I overlap the bottom edge of the skirt with a bias strip and trim any excess fabric. Then I fold the overlapped edge to the inside of the skirt and machine stitch it in place for a clean finished hem. At last, the buttonholes. I'm using the fabric covered ones from Hobby Lobby, and I will make 2. First, I mark the fabric where each buttonhole should be. Then I stitch a frame around each buttonhole using a 1.2 mm stitch length and carefully cut inside the stitched frame. Then I take 2 strands of DMC embroidery floss and weave the edges of the frame, inserting the needle very close to the previous stitch. At the sides of the buttonhole, I wrap twice from the very bottom to the top for a neat reinforced finish. Finally, I hide the thread inside the buttonhole stitches, looping it around several times.